Got it.
And we are live.
Society applauds the uniqueness only when it is within the boundaries of normal. When someone steps out of that line, the constant bullying and trauma ensue. Anwesh Sahu has been painting his world out of the lines, trying to make the world a better place to live in. An engineer, a visual art designer, TEDx speaker, and winner of Mr. Gay India World, Anvesh has fought all odds to make his mark as the embodiment of grace, art, and most importantly, exclusivity and love. The Literary Circle is thrilled to have Anwesh Sahu with us for StarTalk 2022. Welcome, sir. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you. Thank you so much for such a lovely introduction, and an honor to be here, to be in conversation with you wonderful folks.
Yes, sir. So, like I was saying, as you can see, the OCs were tight working all day, but as soon as you entered the room, you lifted up the entire mood. You made us vibe with yourself like you were doing. So, like my first question is related to that only, sir. So you're one of the most active and prominent gay right activists in India, and even though you are very fun and happy-go-lucky person, I know that it's a great responsibility, especially in a country like India. So does it seem nerve-wracking? And how do you keep going?
Well, I just put on a really nice painted face every morning, and I'm just like, ready to face the world head on. And I think that's what, like I said, I just keep vibing. That's really the secret to facing all the negativity around you. Well, to be very honest, on a very serious note, I think I didn't know what I was really getting into because I started off really, really early. I was around 17 going on 18 when I started off with the blog. Initially, it was called, it's I mean, I think I can't remember what it was called initially, but eventually, at least after the year, it was called the Feminaire. And basically, it was just a place where I just wanted to create like a parallel universe of sorts, where I could sort of just be myself and talk about my experience as a queer person, especially a teenaged queer person, because there were not enough narratives around me. So it really just started off as a blog because that was the most, in thing around that time. And I used to follow folks like, Harish Ayyar, Parmesh Shahani, and these were all people who were literary figures. They were writers, so they would really express themselves very well via their blogs. And I still remember reading The Pregnant Thoughts, which was one of the initial blogs by a queer person in India, which was by Harish, who went on to become a very good friend of mine. And when I would read his pieces, I'd be like, I also want to be like him. I also want to be this person who has a voice of his or her own. And I didn't, like I said, I didn't know what I was really getting into. So initially, when I came across Mr. Gay India as a platform, of course, I came across Mr. Gay World first. And this was around the time I had just entered, college. So me transitioning from a school student to becoming a college student and, figuring out that I'm a queer person. And I wanted to talk more about it. And I felt like there was nobody else who was talking enough about it. And I used to find it very strange when I would come out to someone and they'd be like, oh, you're gay. And they would have like a very cringy face. And I'd be like, that's so strange. That should not happen at all. How can I fix this? So, I mean, when I got to know about Mr. Gay World, it was basically a platform where I could talk about something beyond, my beauty. It was basically about, standing up with a cause. And I was very attracted to that idea that I'd be able to have a voice and I can, take that message to a wider audience. Because earlier I was just writing for like, a blog that was accessible to only maybe 100 people in my college, but I wanted to grow bigger, not knowing at all what the repercussions were going to be. So I was just like, let's go ahead and we'll see. And I was not this person that I am today as well. Today I'm a lot more, outgoing and a lot more, like I said, I vibe a lot more today than I used to then. So I think it was a very, very difficult, journey back then, even understanding queerness, because there were not enough reference points. And it is important to understand that you can't look at, especially if you're a queer rights activist here in India, you cannot look at queerness through the Western viewpoint. So you can't just be thinking about, acha, LGBTIQA plus ke bare mein baat karenge. What about Aravanese? What about Kothis? What about Hinjra community? What about Kinnar community? हमारे देश में तो बहुत सारे, there is so much more to the queer community than just the LGBTIQA plus. That's a Western terminology that, of course, now we are adopting as well in our country. So I didn't know much about the community, and I needed a mentor of sorts. And I think Mr. Gay India was that experience where I got to have a mentor in the figure of Sushant Divgekar, who was the then founder and director of Mr. Gay India. He's now very, very popular, very popularly known as Rani Kohinoor, and I belong to the House of Kohinoor. And I got to know more about the queer community here in our country, of course, through Parmesh Shahani, working with Harish. These are all people who sort of, really had led the foundation already for me, and I just had to go ahead with it. So I think kudos to the people who've done the job for us, for people like, the younger queer folks. We are just taking the baton forward where, people like Ashok Rao Kavi, Nishit Saran, these are all people who've really done the hard work for us. Gauri Savant, Disha Pinky Sheikh, these are all people who everybody in our country should also know about. I lost your voice, Yog.
I'm so sorry. Right, sir. So that was a really inspirational answer and a glimpse into your journey. So, moving on, as you said, you have put on a painted face in the early journey that you began. So, you must have had a tumultuous life growing up and coming to terms with your sexuality. So,
Yeah.
how were you able to cope with it, sir? And what advice would you give to our audience or some audience members who might be facing similar situations in their lives?
Well, I think I had a very quintessential, gay boy experience growing up in India, especially femme gay boys. They have a very, very difficult time. And it's important here to understand that it's okay somehow to be gay here in India, but it's not okay for you to be femme and gay. It's which is why it's important to talk about intersectionality. It's important to talk about contextual queerness, and it's important to talk about the folks who are literally at the bottom of the entire social hierarchy, even within the community. So all the femme queer folks, all the trans folks, non-binary folks, they're literally at the bottom. They're treated like garbage bins, and we grow up having to deal with all the negativity that there is around the world. Sometimes people don't even mean. I don't think people also understand how difficult it can be for a queer person to deal with such really, really hard-hitting words that people just throw at you and they just walk away like you're just a garbage bin, and they can just treat you like one. And we are human beings. We all have feelings. So I think a lot of queer folks anyway grew up with like not even zero confidence, like minus level confidence. So I think I didn't even look at myself as a dignified individual. And dignity is a fundamental right according to the Constitution of India. Respect is something that you earn over time, but dignity is with you all the time. But I didn't know that I even had that. So I literally used to also look down upon myself, and so do a lot of queer folks like me. So certainly a very, very difficult journey. There was a time when I wanted to kill myself, and I thought that it was just the best thing to do, just get done with it at once and never have to deal with any negativity around you. And it really is a very difficult journey when you don't have any reference points around you. There could be a Jim Parsons, who is leading a really beautiful life somewhere in America, but closer home, you have a different reality. But in some ways, just having that reference point, that there's some queer person who has had a perhaps a happier life, in a country abroad, that becomes a reference point. And you think that maybe if someone is able to have that kind of life there, then maybe I can replicate it here as well. So that was that one hope that I wanted to sort of cling on to and see where does it take me. And I'm so grateful that my 18-year-old self decided to not kill himself and decided to live, because I would have not had all these wonderful experiences that I've had in the last 5-6 years, where I've met the best of the best people, and where I've worked with the best of the best people, where or I'm able to create art around my queer experience and people want to buy that artwork. I mean, that to me is the most, wildest thing. But yeah, I think for anybody who is going through this kind of an experience, I just want you to know that it does get better. And if it's not getting better right now, then it's certainly not the end at all. It really does get better. You can create a bubble of sorts around you where you create people who believe in your work, who believe in your art, who believe in the work that you do, whatever work you do. And you are valid as a queer being. And it is completely fine if there is no reference point. Be your own reference point. Be the first person to do anything unique and new. And I think that is why people probably know me today, because queer people, or especially femme men in India, have always been bumbling buffoons. They've been caricatures in all the films and popular movies that we see. Name one film that we've had in our country, or one popular television show, popular character in pop culture, where you know about a femme queer person who is celebrated and has had a happy ending. Not one you can think of, actually. Even all the films that we have had, like a Kapoor and Sons, or I think there was another, can't remember the name of the show, but it was a really incredible show where they basically had a queer person being showed in the film. Of course, there's a more recent film also. Can't remember any names. Awful at remembering names, but you all know all the popular films that we've had. Really, you just see a queer person who sort of fits into the heteronormative narrative as well. So if there's a gay man, that gay man can pass off as a heterosexual man as well. If there's a gay woman, that lesbian woman can also pass off as a heterosexual woman. So we have to start talking about and every time I also talk about femme queerness or femme men, everybody in my comment section, especially on Instagram, are like, not all gay men are femme. But I'm like, but some gay men are femme, and we need to talk about them. And if you're not talking about them, you're invisibilizing their existence. And that is absolutely awful and wrong. There are going to be queer men of all different kinds. There are femme men, there are, straight passing, gay men. There are going to be non-binary men. There are going to be, trans men. There's so much to being a man. And if you're not celebrating all these identities, then we're not doing our job well. And if you do not fit into the narrative in some way as a queer person, then go ahead and explore a different kind of masculinity and femininity, or maybe a different kind of gender, and make your own gender. You don't have to fit into any narrative at all.
Definitely, sir. So I hope that your answer inspired a lot of people in our audience who must have faced a similar situation, because I might not be able to understand what's going on with the queer folk, but I definitely empathize with you. It must have been really hard for you. It was even hard for us to listen what you had gone through. So imagining being at your place and you coming out as who you are right now, I definitely believe that it gets better in the end. Like you said, I totally agree with it. And I'm glad that you're here with us, with our audience, to inspire them. We are really glad, sir. Sir, we just had like this one question. We have seen your blog, your Instagram, and even your username right now. The mate, it's Effeminaire, if I'm not wrong, if I'm not pronouncing it wrong.
Effeminaire, yeah.
So what's the significance of this name? If you can share it with our audience.
Yes, happy to. I very well remember when I had come out to myself, the first thing I told myself was, if I'm ever going to write a book, it's going to be called the Effeminaire. And of course, effeminaire is basically, it's a Latin word, and it associates to any form of femininity or effeminacy that is usually looked down upon. And because I am an effeminate man, and I thoroughly, love living with this effeminacy, which I have despised myself as well growing up. And there was a point when I grew up and I realized that, okay, you know what, this narrative around effeminacy or this narrative around femininity is very skewed, and it should rather be celebrated. It's a beautiful thing in men and women, for that matter. and why should we anyway be looking down upon it? And therefore, me naming myself or naming my blog the Feminine was a way of taking away that stigma and reclaiming this space for ourselves, where being effeminate or being feminine in any way is going to be as beautiful and as powerful and as strong and as game changing as being masculine. And I'm so glad that today there are, younger folks who I go sometimes and I check out, I check the hashtag the Feminaire. There are people who post stuff with, the Feminaire, which is not even in the English dictionary right now. It's probably in the Latin dictionary. And there are kids who write, the Feminaire as their username. And I'm like, that is so cute. I love it. And I'm so glad that there are queer kids now who, associate themselves with being effeminate proudly, because it's a beautiful thing. It's not to be looked down upon. So yeah, and I think now anyway with my art, I try to sort of take that baton forward, and I keep reiterating the idea that feminine men can be so beautiful, and I create these beautiful imageries of me with these very avant-garde clothes, which a lot of people don't understand sometimes as well, but it's just something that's going on in my head, and I want to sort of vomit it out as an art piece. And I love it. I love doing that. I mean, again, vibing is the word of the day. So I keep vibing with my art.
Definitely. We love the fact that you took something that was so hard hitting and made it into something so beautiful and something fun and worth vibing with.
Thank you, Prishita.
Okay, now I would like to ask you a question regarding your life. Your life has been a life of your own difficulties, and now you're inspiring people with your art across the globe. So, what do you think was the turning point in your life?
Well, the turning point really was that one night, when I was really at the brim of just killing myself. I very well remember I went to the sink at my place, and I looked at this bottle of phenyl, and I was like, you know what? Because I was really done with crying. I was really tired of crying myself to sleep every night. And I said, tonight is the night when I change that narrative for myself, and I decide if I want to kill myself and get done with it, or if I want to live. But if I want to live, then I want to live without any form of guilt of being gay or being feminine or being effeminate, any of those negative, connotations that we associated with being queer. And I think I don't know, maybe I was too scared to kill myself. But I just decided that, let's just live this life. But if I'm going to live it, I'm going to rewrite this, life for myself in a much better way, a much more empowering story, and a much more beautiful story of mine. Because I really believe that I am beautiful, and I do deserve a beautiful life. And I think that is probably the most important, realization that we need to have as individuals, not just as queer people, but just as individuals in general, that we are beautiful, that we are powerful, and that we deserve to live a very beautiful, empowered life, a dignified life where everybody treats us as equal individuals and celebrates us for who we are. And we keep doing, keep trying to better our craft, or being better, trying to be better as an individual as well. And since that day, I have not looked back. I put that phenyl bottle down. I went off to sleep. I woke up that next morning and I said to myself, you know what? I'm gay. And so what? And it just completely just flipped my life completely 360 degrees. I used to live with so much shame. There were so many people who used to look down me, and those are the same people who write to me. My bullies, school bullies, have written to me. One of my bullies came out to me and told me how much that he wanted to date me, and I was like, wow. I mean, queer people bullying other queer people is literally the worst thing. And it's just wild to me how things change once you start accepting yourself. It really is miraculous how things can change around you. So, and which is why I keep telling everybody that just be original, be yourself, embrace yourself completely with all your beautiful facets that you have to yourself, and then keep trying to better yourself, keep trying to edit your craft, and make it all the more beautiful. And then tomorrow the world is going to be yours. That's all.
Definitely. So like, and you are a very, like I mentioned before, you're a very easygoing, fun-loving person. but everyone has a dark past. You had yours, and the fact that you are able to present it in front of people in a manner that's so eloquent, it takes a lot of courage, sir. And not everyone can do that. And I'm sure you must have had your fair share of coping mechanism. You're an artist. So do you use your art as a way to cope up with whatever you have gone through? And to extrapolate on that question, do you believe that art comes in the best form through pain?
Mhm. Well, I work as a technical artist as well as a visual artist. So a lot of my work, especially at the moment, is at the intersection of tech and design. And I work in the space of game design, and I thoroughly enjoy, doing what I do. And post my, working hours, I usually spend more time creating work for my own label, the Feminaire, where I create wedding artworks for my clients, and I create, of course, work for my um, as NFTs, and of course for my Instagram as well, which of course is a mouthful, and it can be rather overwhelming. But coming back to your question, um, I think to some extent, a lot of my work is definitely, I think the reason probably I do a lot of things is because I'm sort of in some ways trained to overcompensate for all the negativity that I've faced in my life. So even back in school, like any form of bullying I would face, I'd be like, I have to overcompensate and I have to do extra well in academics or extra well in a competition, so as to make sure that I'm still, someone. I don't want to feel left out in the background at all. I hated being in the background. So I think a lot of my work ethic today is basically comes out of that pain, that, I don't want to be left out. I don't want to feel othered in any way. So always try and create more and more and more art, so as to forget, sometimes what I've been through in the past. So even today, when I go through like if I'm going through like an emotional turmoil, I'll create more art. So because it helps me forget what I'm going through, any form of negativity, any form of tension that I'm going through in my life. And the kind of work that I create, I think it actually stems from, not being allowed to do a lot of things. So a lot of my art is actually a form of rebel today, but I am a rebel with a cause. I try and create, artworks which are very over the top, very avant-garde, and I love creating these really, imageries that can be very disturbing sometimes to some people as well. Some that make people sometimes very uncomfortable as well, because you don't imagine a man in a corset and in a, like a bralette, or heels, or like really avant-garde, silhouettes. And these are actually silhouettes that you've never seen on men, but it's just in my head, and I thoroughly just enjoy creating them, as just a form of rebel, so that people know that this is also very much a part of queer culture, and they should know what, queer culture entails. If the idea of being queer just fits into the cishet narrative very easily, then it's the easiest thing to do. If it already fits into your narrative, then of course you're going to accept it and be like, wow, Hanji, please come ahead, and we will accept you with all our with open arms. But if our queerness does not fit into the cishet narrative, the popular cishet narrative, then it is a problem. And that is exactly the problem that I want to create, so that people in general understand that art is really freeing, and there shouldn't be any limit to it, and we should be able to explore, all possible boundaries, and push those boundaries away, and break out of it, and create something that's just a visual spectacle overall. And if it can be a reference point, great. And that is exactly why I'm creating NFTs right now, because I want people to have that point of reference. Tomorrow, when we're all, 100 years from now, when we're all dead and gone, we will still have that art piece on the blockchain, and someone will look at it and be like, wow, something like this had happened 100 years ago, so maybe I am valid.
Yes, being an artist, as you said, you are an artist, a rebel with a cause. So I'm sure you have inspired a lot of people to pick up art as a form of coping mechanism, or maybe a form of expression. But nonetheless, your art has been appreciated by multitudes, and we, as LCIs, we also appreciate your art. So, sir,
Thank
our
you.
next question is, what is your inspiration? What brought you to this form of visual art? As an artist, what is your inspiration like?
I think I've just been a kid who was extremely obsessed with fashion. Even back in even during my engineering days, I would spend hours just hogging on to shows from the 70s and the 80s and the 90s of a Mugler show, a Terry Mugler show, or a Jean-Paul Gaultier, or an Alexander McQueen, or a Georges Shobika. I would just or a Schiaparelli, Chanel. Especially, I remember watching these shows by from the Chanel to 2000 to 2004, shows. John Galliano used to be the design head of, I think, Dior back then, and he had these really he used to do a lot of couture, pieces from in the early 2000s era when he was heading Dior. So I would just go and just hog on to these shows, and I would thoroughly enjoy these shows. I love watching, couture shows, or even for that matter, I think in the recent years, Gope, she's done a lot of good work. She's one of the few couturiers, in fact, in the world, and she's a Chinese couturier. So I would just look at these, beautiful wearable pieces of art, and I would just mesmerized by how their minds work. And I always wanted to sort of do something in the space of fashion, but I was, of course, working in the, I was in Triple IT, which is the most technical, tech savvy institute. You are filled with, people who are just literally looking into their computers all day long. So I was like, how do we, I mean, it was just a natural progression that I've combined, digital art with my fashion references. And I, of course, when I won Mr. Game Day, I also started modeling professionally. So I had a lot of pictures of mine, and I had a lot of naked pictures of mine. So I was like, how do I bring these pictures of mine with my art and my interest in fashion? And Instagram is a visual medium, so people love having really just erotic images on Instagram. But of course, I wanted to make it as sanskari as possible as well. So I was like, I'm going to cover myself up, but I'm going to make these outfits which I'm really, really inspired by from all these amazing designers. And that's how I started drawing clothes on myself. And then I got to know that this is actually a thing. It's called cyber fashion. I think, I'm not sure how many people do it here in India, but I think I'm the only one who does it. But there are people around the world who are also into cyber fashion, and I love it. I enjoy it, and I think now that we are into Web3, there is so much talk around augmented reality, virtual reality, extended reality. I mean, extended reality is the future of a virtual reality. That is also the future of humankind right now. So yeah, I'm really glad that I can now create artworks that probably can translate into an AR outfit of sorts, which you can probably at least take a picture of yourself in and use it and have fun with it.
Definitely. So, like we mentioned, as well as you mentioned that you are an engineer. We at LC constantly strive to promote creativity in our college, which is an engineering college. And trust us when we say that we face a total burnout during vivas and labs and exams, etc. So, you as a person who is also an engineer and also very, very creative by nature, how do you keep creativity ignited in you constantly?
Well, to be very honest, I think engineering is a very creative field. And I think the way we have sometimes taught the subject here in India, I think that is quite problematic. I don't know if I'm allowed to say this here. But I do think engineers are very creative. I do think engineering as a subject is filled with creativity. I mean, it is creative people who've built, this device that we are talking in. This is also creativity in a lot of ways. So I think I've always been surrounded by all these amazing engineers who really loved doing what they did, and they were also creative in a lot of ways. And I've also made sure that I never allow my creativity to be curbed by any social, political, or external factor in any way. Because I mean, we're all creative individuals, but our creativity sometimes does get curbed by the surroundings that we're living in. Which is why I always talk about creating a bubble of yours where you at least feel like you belong. Find like 2-3 people around you who you vibe with, and you can at least live that creativity of that creative being of yours through that. It is very difficult. I'm pretty sure. I mean, I used to find it very difficult as well, because there are so many assignments that you have to work around. There is too much happening. You have pressure of placements, and there's just already so much going on that keeping up with a club. Okay, something just happened. Did I did you all lose
Yeah,
me?
yeah, we lost you for a second there, sir.
Okay, okay.
Yeah, yes, you're here now. We can hear you.
Super. Okay, perfect. So yeah, just coming back to your question, I was just saying that I totally understand, I totally relate to how difficult it can be to keep up with your creativity with all that's going on around you, because you also have to fit into the social structure in some ways, and you have to do your assignments, you have to turn up with your exam, to turn up for your exams, labs, all of that. So I think just do a little bit of it every day. That helps your creative juices flowing. I used to draw just a little every day. So right now also I'm learning how to, get in. I'm getting back to 3D illustrations. So I do a little every day, and I think that helps. Just it keeps you active. It doesn't make your creative side dormant in any way. So yeah, I think baby steps, I guess.
Yes, art is a very important thing in the lives of engineers as well. I would agree as an engineering student myself. So, as a wannabe artist, and I'm sure on behalf of many others in my college and other engineering colleges, I would like to ask you: does it ever happen to you that you hit a writer's block or a creative block? And if yes, then how do you come out of that?
Oh my God, I've had these discussions with so many of my friends, but to be very honest, I've never had an artist's block, to be very, very honest, because I think, I don't know, maybe I have ADHD. I'm always just, maybe I'm consuming a lot of content. Maybe that's the problem. I just consume, like, I follow way too many shows. I follow way too many things on the internet. I love following trends. In fact, trends research and forecasting was one of my subjects while I was doing my master's in design. So that's just, I am a sucker for anything that's going on around the world. I want to know what's going on. So every time you consume a lot of content, there's also so much that's going on in your head, and I keep sketching them down. I have a little sketchbook of mine where I just keep sketching stuff up. I think that can actually be that is probably the reason why I don't feel like an artist's block, because I always have a reference to look at. So even when there are days when I'm happy, then there are days when I'm not that up, and I'm really, really, like, beaten down, and I feel like, there's so much work to do at office, or there's so much, no, if I feel like the client is not really understanding my viewpoint. Okay, I'm back again. Looks like
Yes,
Zoom does not want our conversation to continue at all. Zoom is like, let's
yes. The COVID era problems. Can't really help.
But yeah, I was just saying that, let me just quickly just conclude the fact that I think you should, every time you're feeling very creative, just like jot down your points or jot down your ideas. And then when you're feeling down, just look back at it and feel, ignited again. Which is why I always keep talking about archival as well. Archive your content, archive your artworks, your writings in the form of blogs, in the form of posts on Instagram, so that you keep looking at your work as a reference point as well, as other than, looking at other people's work. Yeah, that's all.
Thank you so much, sir. So lastly, I just wanted to say that you have a great, incredible journey, and I wish you could give a message to our audience who might face a similar struggle like you in any sphere, in any domain that you belong to, what will be your message to our audience?
The person that you're looking into the mirror should be the person that you love the most, that you respect the most, that you embrace the most. Once you embrace yourself wholeheartedly, there's nothing in this world that's stopping you. No matter whether you want to be a doctor or an engineer, a lawyer, an artist, a visual artist, a designer, whatever you want to be, you can be anything if you just first start with embracing yourself. And then the world around you is going to look very beautiful, is going to seem very beautiful, and that they are then going to be your source of inspiration every day, and you are going to be your source of inspiration every day as well, and that's the most beautiful thing in life. And don't take yourself too seriously. Yeah, very, very important. Don't take yourself seriously at all. You're nobody. But you should be somebody to someone, but to yourself you should be a nobody.
What I remember for a long, long time, sir.
Super. And thank you so much for having me. Such a delight, having this conversation with you folks. I wish this was happening in real life, but I guess COVID is sucking the life out of us still. But this does for now.
Yes.
So with that, I would like to say that that brings us to the end of an exhilarating discourse with the talented Anwesh Kumar. And I'm sure with him, our audience gained the confidence to pursue what they love without the fear of judgment. We hope that you all take away the love he has to offer and bloom the seeds of belongingness in the community for the betterment of our future. And I hope that all the viewers and us for sure vibe along with Anvesh today.
Yes, absolutely.
Thank you, sir. Thank you so much for being here today. It was lovely talking to you.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Yoga and Ipshita. You were lovely moderators and a delight speaking to you folks. Have a lovely fest ahead of you.
Thank you so much, sir.
Ciao.
Have a good day, sir.
Have a good day.
Have a good day, sir.
Bye-bye.
Bye, sir.